The Mariners are getting ready to take on the Chicago White Sox in the final game of this 4-game set. Joe and I are going to break down the first 3 games of this series and what happened in those games, including the very scary game 1. We're then going to talk about how the Mariners and their pitching staff are dealing with the injuries that are currently happening, including Andres Munoz and Brian Wu, how they're going to fix that and what they're going to do moving forward. We'll wrap it all up by talking about the Texas Rangers series coming up over the Father's Day weekend and who's going to be starting in those games, because it might not be who you think it's going to be. Thank you guys so much for watching episode 95 of the Hit It Here podcast, part of the Believe Network, the Justin Novak episode, Joe. We actually have a Mariners player to talk about as number 95. And how are you, Joe?
I'm feeling good. This is the last Mariners player, right?
No.
Oh no, there's one more. Oh my God,
there might even be 2 more.
Shut your mouth. I was under the impression that Novak was going to be the last one. That's exciting. Don't tell me who it is. I don't want spoilers. My brain, like, who would have worn numbers 96? Obviously, beyond 95 as the bullpen catcher, wherever Justin Novak, where he truly is. The social media presence of him and his cool shirts. This is a great episode to dedicate. 4 more?
I mean, there's more than 4, but I'm not just going to do 2 players an episode. 99 is going to be fun.
That's crazy. I would have never bet that we would have seen another player after Justin Novak, honestly, as far as a Hit It Here podcast episode. But a word from BetOnline. Thank you to BetOnline for being the sponsor for the Hit It Here podcast. BetOnline is your #1 source for the NBA Finals and Stanley Cup Finals this season. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. And when the games are over, do not fret, because you can head on over to the online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with a variety of different slot games as well. They've got over 150. Head to the website today to get in on the action and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. And as everyone predicted, Colton, game 1 for the Mariners and White Sox series.
Easy 4 win.
Yeah,
easy.
like most, just chalk it up, write it, book it, whatever. Anything that you can think of as that was a quick and simple win. 8-4. Never looked back. Never a doubt. Eric Fedde shoved for about 7 innings. Just not a lot of strikeouts though, only 4. Mariners only struck out 6 times in this game. I didn't get a great opportunity to watch it as I was closing. I was at work. But was it just a lot of soft contact that Fedde was giving up, or was it just missing, I don't even know. I don't even know where to begin talking about his start, because yes, he's been great this year. Did I expect 7 innings, 5 hits, 1 earned, 4 Ks? No. Ultimately, Dom Canzone makes him exit the game with the leadoff home run in the 7th. That's not how that works. The 8th. Because then he was relieved of his duties. The Mariners would then go on to continue to score more runs in that inning, tie the game at that point, because the White Sox had scored 4 up until that point, getting 3 off of Gilbert, 1 off of Matt Bowman. So game 1, Colton, I will defer to you now, as the late inning shenanigans kind of really unfolded for the Mariners here.
This was a game where the Mariners had, against Eric Fedde, I believe it was like a .295 expected batting average, so not bad. It's not like they had like a .70, they were just popping everything up. Mm-hmm. But it's also not a game where they were just driving the ball all over the yard. Fedde was good, and I think that it kind of goes to show, yes, obviously there's a lot to blame on the Mariners offense in a game like this. However, when Fedde leaves the game and all of a sudden the Mariners start hitting, there's something there. Like, obviously Fedde was gone, and then the Mariners were able to get to like Michael Kopech, for example, and whatnot. Eric Fedde was just that good in that game. And obviously, there were a lot of big moments in this game in the last 2 innings. The Mariners scored 4 in the 8th and 4 in the 9th inning, obviously capped off by the Cal Raleigh grand slam, the walk-off. But really, there's so many people, I think, in this game that were really the unsung heroes. Scott Service, for example, who came out and defended Cal when Cal had every right to be upset with the home plate umpire. Had every right to be upset with him because it was a missed call. It was a botched call. And the umpire was wrong, and Cal started to argue. And you never see Cal argue, ever. And he was out there arguing with the umpire, and Scott pushed Cal away, got in there, and got himself thrown out instead of Cal. Big moment in the game, because then Cal's the one that came up with the walk-off.
Mm-hmm.
Julio had struck out, Cal had struck out. That brought up Mitch Haniger with the bases loaded, and he was able to dump a little dinker on an 0-2 count into right field with 2 outs to score a couple of runs to really get that inning going. And then, of course, the Luke Raley bunt to score a run that tied the game as well. Just fire me up, Luke Raley. It was the perfect bunt. I don't know how he did it on a 99-mile-an-hour fastball way inside. No idea how he did it. Don't care, because it was sick.
Got it done.
And what a very, very cool moment for him and for the Mariners. Fun fact, Joe. The Mariners have Luke Raley until 2029.
Yeah, no, I for whatever reason, I looked at his reference page a couple days ago and I was like, wait a minute, why do we have Luke Raley till 2029? It's like, oh, he just, as MLB service time does, just let you keep players forever, it seems like. Bro is quickly becoming a fan favorite, like very fast. Like, I don't want to say same breakneck speed that like Gino did in 22. I said it on stream last night because I didn't stream the night that this game happened because you were doing it. That bunt might be the most hype bunt I've ever seen. It just in atmosphere, player reaction, announcer reaction. Like Sims's call was great on that. Like, I don't know if there's another bunt in the history of the game that I've laid my eyes on that was that exciting. The game is then capped off with a grand slam from Cal. He knew, like, it's one of those ones where as soon as the ball left the pitcher's hand, you could tell that Cal was hitting that thing, like, hitting it to the moon. Bro got every ounce of that baseball, and a great way to finish a game that you started off pretty poorly with. It wasn't as prolific of an offensive output in game 2, but again, it was a situation where the Mariners have to claw back against, for whatever reason, this White Sox team. Offense is just kind of either lulled to sleep or whatever for a bit, and they do edge out a win in the second game too, Colton.
Yeah, it was a game that started off with the news that Bryan Woo was not going to be making the start. I was at work, so all of a sudden I just looked down at my phone, saw the lineup. I'm like, hey, that's not Bryan Woo on the mound. Something's wrong here. And come to find out, he had an MRI on his arm, and they were waiting for results on that. Rumor has it he is in good spirits, which is good. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in just a second. Also, to win this game for the Mariners, they also had Stanek in for the second night in a row. And so that's something that we'll have to talk about a little bit as well with Andres Munoz. But in this game, you called up Jonathan Diaz, a guy who has been pretty decent down in AAA, but has had his warts at the major league level. And all things considered, he did a great job. When it comes down to it, 5.1 innings pitched, 3 runs. He did give up 9 hits, but he spread them out across those 5.1 innings pitched. 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. Like, it wasn't great. It was nothing special, but he did his job. And he was able to keep the Mariners in the game for 5 1/3. And because of that, the Mariners were able to claw their way back, like you said. It was a little bit scary because the White Sox scored 1 in the second, and then the Mariners came back and scored 1 of their own. The White Sox scored 2 in the third, and it felt like Jonathan Diaz was going to be out of the game by then. I think they had even started to get the bullpen up. Not quite warming up yet, but the guys were up stretching. And then the Mariners scored 1 in the third, but that was it for the White Sox after that. And then the Mariners came back scoring 2 in the 7th inning on a 3-0 swinging Cal Raleigh, scoring Julio from first base. Both game 1 and game 2, Joe, Cal Raleigh coming through in the clutch.
Yeah, he's definitely heating back up. It was a situation where a week and some change ago, his batting average was below 200. Was kind of scuffling, swinging at pitches he maybe normally doesn't. Feels like he's got his confidence back. He's swinging the bat a little bit better now. And yeah, I was so unbelievably worried about Jonathan Diaz in that 3rd inning. It was back-to-back home runs given up to Vaughn and Paul DeYoung. Paul DeYoung's home run looked like he half swung, poked it the other way, and it still just went out. It felt weird, but he manages to dance around it. Gets to, like you said, 5 1/3. It felt like almost like I won't say vintage, but it felt like a Marco start. A Marco start where you're like, yeah, go out there, give us 5 innings, keep us in the game. It's exactly what he did. Then turn it over to the bullpen, and the bullpen did their job in this game with some more questionable umpiring like into the first game. Not as bad, I would say, but still some questionable moments. Thornton did a great job, 1 2/3 in this game. Mike Baumann goes and gets 2 outs, and then a lefty comes up, so you go get Sauce. No, was the lefty up, and then they brought in a pinch hitter, right?
Yeah, they brought in a pinch hitter to face Sauce. It was Danny Mendick.
Yeah, and then Sauce made him look silly. And then, of course, you said Stanek back out there for the ninth. Felt like another game where, like, hey, where's Munoz? But proves that we didn't need him, I guess, by some sort of lucky stars. Stanek goes out there and gets his 5th save on the year. Hyped as can be in the dance circle to end the game. Good vibes going 2-up in this series. And moving on to game 3, Colton, Bryce Miller on the mound.
Hold on. Joe, I want to let everyone know that we are proud to support the Refuse to Abuse campaign from the Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. This game's coming up on June 16th on Father's Day. Be sure to watch the Mariners take on the Rangers and purchase tickets to be part of a special reserved game day section. You can join over 1,000 fans for family fun and show that Seattle is committed to Refuse to Abuse.
Refuse to Abuse is a partnership between the Seattle Mariners and the Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence to promote healthy, respectful relationships. Print, radio, and television public service announcements are produced each year featuring prominent Mariners players and managers, reaching hundreds of thousands of Mariners fans like yourself.
Now, Joe, keep going on about Game 3.
And Colton, Bryce Miller, as I was saying, on the mound for the Mariners in Game 3. I predicted a pretty lofty ledger for him in Game 3 here. I predicted 6 innings with no runs and 12 Ks. Bryce Miller did not quite reach 12 strikeouts, but 8 Ks for Bryce Miller in this game. 7 innings of shutout baseball. A great bounce-back start. All that we really could have asked for out of Bryce Miller in this one. Opposite him on the mound, Jonathan Cannon was crazy for the White Sox tonight. Had the Mariners' numbers basically all night until Luke Riley homered in the bottom of the 7th inning. 1-0 game. Classic. Seemed like whenever the Mariners' offense is struggling, the pitchers are on, you're looking at a 1-run game. Of course, Munoz not available in this game. Did hear early in the day here before the game that Bryan Woo, its MRI came back clean, which is great. Injury updates for France and Polanco as well, seemingly trending in the right direction. Munoz, they're not super worried, but they're definitely taking it a little bit more cautiously. Was not available in this game, and in the 9th inning, Mike Baumann gives up a home run to Luis Robert Jr., continuing his audition for the Mariners, it seems like, and goes into the extra innings here, presented by Sonic, not Arby's this time, guys. Trent Thornton, masterclass, gets out of the little bloop single into right field. Slow enough for Rayleigh to get burning around the bases. A walk-off, 1-run win here for Seattle. 40th win on the year. The Astros, they lost earlier in this day, and the Rangers are currently leading the Dodgers, but that's okay. The Mariners got a dub, and that's what matters. Heading into Game 4, there's some thoughts and opinions that Emerson Hancock is in Seattle with the team as like on the taxi squad, similar to how Jonathan Diaz was earlier in the week. And it hasn't been fully said yet, but Emerson Hancock has to be there, in my opinion, to take Game 4 and you reslot the rotation and push Castillo back to the Texas series. That's just where I'm at. I feel like they have to do it. It just feels right. It's something that makes sense for them to do, especially that you've won 3 out of 4. You've guaranteed won this series already. Sure, you don't want to throw a game away, but Hancock, it would be on normal rest for him. I feel like it makes a lot of sense to do that, and then it pushes Bryan Woo's start. Instead of being on Sunday against the Rangers, it would move it into either Tuesday or Wednesday of the following week. So expect Emerson Hancock. It hasn't fully been announced yet. I'm putting my chips in on it. Emerson Hancock versus Garrett Crochet, so it'll be a tough matchup regardless of who's on the mound for the Mariners. If Jonathan Cannon was able to go 7 strong against the Mariners, Garrett Crochet might just do us in tomorrow. But again, we've already won the series. We've already taken as much as we can get without being too greedy. But gosh darn it, go be greedy, Seattle. Go be greedy. Go win the final game. Break out the mops and head into a Texas series riding as high as you can. But Colton, even with a little bit of the injury update news here on Bryan Woo, on a scale of 1 to 10, like, where are you at with it?
Personally, Joe, I think I'm at like a 4, maybe a 5 out of 10 on my word with Bryan Woo, simply because after his scratch start where Jonathan Diaz did pitch, we heard that Bryan Woo was in good spirits and was joking around with his teammates and just taking it one day at a time. And so I think that this could be something as simple as just a start that gets pushed back. Maybe they just skipped him in the rotation once, and he goes again in his next scheduled start, which at this point is kind of going to get messy because the Mariners have an off day that could change things as well if they wanted to reslot the rotation against the Texas Rangers. And with Jonathan Diaz being sent down, we know that he can't come back up and pitch unless there is an injury. So I guess maybe if Woo did get put on the injured list, maybe they could technically bring him back up. But if he doesn't get put on the injured list, that you just skip one more start for him, then Jonathan Diaz will not be able to come back up to make that start. So obviously they'd have to fill it some other way. Again, with the off day, maybe there's a way that they can just like scratch it as a whole and just make it without him for the next week. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work for the Mariners, but in terms of where I'm at with Bryan Woo right now, Joe, it's tough to say because until we know for sure what's going to happen and the full extent of his injury, I don't necessarily know how I can feel about it going forward and what it means for the Mariners at, say, the trade deadline.
Yeah, there's, I'm sure, numerous people, countless fans that are just refreshing Twitter as much as they can to see if there's any news about Bryan Woo. The thing that I think I'm most worried about, there's a couple of factors here, is this seems like it's a recurring issue with his arm of like missing a bullpen, starts getting scratched, whatever. Like it's the same issue that cropped up earlier in the year. And that makes sense. Like the arm injury and the arm stress is it's not just fully going to go away necessarily. So that's probably my biggest concern is like, it's something that's lingering. And I feel like lingering arm injuries, it's almost like a slow leak in a flat tire. Like eventually it's going to have to get replaced. You can't just continue to push this off. So my hope is that it's like, it's not something that would require a big surgery. Like I don't want him to get a second Tommy John. Don't laugh at my metaphor like that's not a fire metaphor.
I happen to have a slow leak in my left front tire right now that I just continuously keep refilling, hoping that
eventually, Colton, that's probably gonna bite you in the butt.
It felt a little targeted, but
how was I meant to know that you know that right
it
now?
Was weird. It was weird that you said it. All right.
My apologies, but for Bryan Woo, the starting pitching depth that this team has right now. We obviously we saw Diaz. Hancock started earlier in the year, and maybe they try and say, Logan Evans, never mind. You have to go back to being a starter. That's another possibility for them. So I'm probably around that same 4 or 5 with you. Like I'm not as worried as I was yesterday when the scratch was announced and it was an MRI kind of a vibe, but it's definitely something worth monitoring. And unfortunately, we don't know the final answer right now. Similarly, Colton, to I think where we're at with Andres Munoz, we haven't really heard much about why he didn't pitch in the second game as far as availability is concerned. Last time we saw him was on Sunday against the Royals where he threw 15 pitches. Looked good. He mentioned that he wasn't his sharpest, wasn't feeling his best, and any comments, questions, or concerns about why he didn't go out there for a 6-out save, he kind of laughed at of like, oh, what do you mean? Not like in the Josh Hader way, but like guys, like my back literally got tweaked a couple days ago. You want me to go back out there again? For me, this seems like a situation where he is probably over communicating, and not in a bad way, but like communicating very clearly, hey, I can't go tonight. There's going to be situations where that's not going to fly because one, not that it won't fly, that they're going to force Munoz to pitch, but like Stanek, it's not going to go 3 days in a row. You are hoping that you don't have to go to Voth in the 9th inning or whatever. Because Trent Thornton in the second game went 1 2/3. Like your, I want to say 2 best leverage potential guys in Stanek and Thornton so far in the year. If Munoz is down, like sometimes it just gets a little sketchy. So I'm hoping either there's just more clarity given to us, because I think you're with me in the situation of like, if Munoz can't go, the bullpen is like, I don't want to say screwed, but given the load management of how the bullpen's been used in this White Sox series so far, it's going to be tough to kind of navigate without Munoz.
And it's something that the Mariners are just going to have to figure out the rest of the way until something's done, like until they go make a trade or something. Because if they continuously have to monitor Munoz's back so he can't go as often as he has been, because let's be honest, we talked about this before, how they're going to run Munoz into the ground. Well, here we are. And like now he can't go in some of these big like 1-run games. When I was at game 2 and I saw Stanek warming up in the bullpen, I'm like, that's not necessarily a good sign, because I was hoping it was, if Munoz is healthy, he 100% goes in that spot.
Yeah,
absolutely. But that just wasn't the case in game 2. And so moving forward, hopefully we get a little bit more clarity on what it's going to look like, the load management for Andres Munoz, because again, Stanek we know hasn't been all that sharp so far this year. You have, Mike Baumann. Okay, like he's been decent, but maybe you don't want to throw him out there, especially after that game against the Orioles, I think it was, that he, gave up the game in the 9th or whenever it was he was pitching. Not the Orioles. Was it the Orioles?
The Royals?
Royals, thank you. They
Wasn't
sound
it? Wasn't it the Royals? He gave up the home run to MJ Melendez.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
The
And
Royals.
he played for the Orioles. That's
There it is.
That's what happened there. But yeah, until they go out there and get another guy, or Santos comes back and maybe Evans comes up in the back end of that bullpen, or Troy Taylor. That's another option, another popular one that's been thrown around a lot. I think we might be getting closer to seeing his major league debut as well. So I don't know. Moving forward, it's just going to be a lot of wait and see with this Mariners bullpen right now, especially as we head into the Rangers series, Joe.
This Rangers series, I don't want to say is as important of a series that you've played so far this year, because there have been some marquee matchups. I think the Royal series is one, the Astros, like 4 games at home against the Astros. This Rangers series at home, you're playing much better baseball at home than you are on the road. The Rangers are 4-6 in their last 10 as of Wednesday. They're 6-13 against teams above 500. This is a chance to bury them in the first half. And maybe bury is a bit of a stretch, but if you can show dominance over this team and really separate yourselves from them to create the gap, because last year we saw the Rangers have that gap at the beginning of the year, and yes, it did not necessarily hold, so nothing is guaranteed in baseball, but at this time last year the Rangers were 17 games over 500. They were 41-24 on June 12th, the day that we're recording this, and they had a 4.5 game lead on the Astros, a 5.5 game lead on the Angels, and then a 9 game lead on the Mariners at that point. With the Rangers coming to town against Seattle, a potentially reworked rotation of Castillo, Kirby, Gilbert, I have no reason to believe that the Mariners shouldn't go out there and put their best foot forward and reslot that rotation so it is Castillo, Kirby, Gilbert. Because, yes, there's some nuanced things that may or may not have happened. It's hard for us to tell right now as we're kind of talking about a game into the future. But game 1, if a roster or if a rotation reslot does happen, Andrew Heaney versus Luis Castillo, pitching matchup obviously goes to Castillo in that regard. Because on the year, just as a team in general, right, we're just not moving away from player-specific things for Castillo versus Heaney, but on the year, the Mariners pitching 3.55 team ERA. Rangers currently at a 4.07, so they're a bit more middle of the road compared to some of the other opponents we've been facing, but definitely not nearly as good as Seattle. And hitting-wise, this is a situation where we're better than both, and a team that isn't as bad as the White Sox. The Mariners, 98 WRC plus, 16th in baseball. The Rangers, 20th with a 95 WRC plus. I don't know if I said 96 or if I said 98. It's 98 for the WRC plus. Doesn't matter. Last year when the Rangers were going bananas in the first half, they had a 116 WRC. You need to bury them in the dirt to start off this series with Castillo on the mound. Or Kirby, depending on if they reslot. But I'm assuming they'll reslot.
Yeah, I think that at the time of recording, this is 6.5 game lead over the Rangers and a 7.5 over the Astros. You have a good cushion, but no cushion is safe right now. And as the team leading the American League West, you have the second place team, even though they are 6.5 back, coming into your house. Don't get me wrong. Even if the Mariners, God forbid, get swept in this series, they still have the lead. They're still in first place. So it's not necessarily the end of the looking at how the Mariners have played so far against the White Sox. I have my worries because offensively, they have struggled against the worst team in baseball, a team that has 5 wins on the season away from their home ballpark. It's tough to see this Mariners offense being enough to overcome the offense of the Rangers, even though they are struggling. Like you said, they still have a decent offense, all things considered. And the Mariners pitching, of course, yes, if it does go Castillo, Kirby, Gilbert, or some version of that, I think the pitching staff will be fine. But the Mariners offense, I don't know if it's going to be enough to overcome what the Rangers have going on the mound. Like you said, Heaney in game 1, possibly. What are we looking at for game 2?
Nasty Nate Eovaldi in game 2, likely up against Kirby during the reslot. But yeah, Nathan Eovaldi, we know he's pretty good, guys. All right, he's been good for a while. We know what we're gonna get against Nathan Eovaldi, but I don't know. I'm not. You said if the Rangers sweep, my eye started twitching. I'm not gonna lie. Like you like triggered something in my brain that was like, what did he just say? He what? I just don't see it, and I understand that the concerns with the offense, given how they've looked in the White Sox series, but in that same way, the pitching, aside from the hiccups in game one, has done enough to keep you in those games. And it's a matter of will they continue to do more against the Rangers because the Rangers are a better team than the White Sox. So it's like a bunch of give and take, trying to like kind of figure out where it all balances out at. I don't know if it's necessarily a version of the Seattle Mariners where they play down to teams like that seemed like they did in 2022. They were much better against teams above 500 compared to teams that were below 500 back in 22. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but that was something I made a video specifically about it. Okay, I remember that occurring. This year, Mariners teams above 500, they're playing pretty okay. They're 11-15. It's not great, but it's better than the Rangers who are 6-13. But the Mariners are also showing that they can beat up on the worse, the bad baseball teams like the Angels, like the Athletics, like the White Sox. The Rangers aren't necessarily in that category. What team would I liken most similar to the Rangers at this point in the year? Probably the Houston Astros, which we just took 3 out of 4 at home right before going on that little road trip against Oakland and Kansas City. I don't see a situation. Man, I can't keep talking like that because it's gonna get me in trouble. But as optimistic as I am, I have a lot of confidence in this baseball team, night in, night out, even when they're losing. Sure, I'll be mad as hell, won't watch the game, but when they come back and win, I'll be like, yeah, I knew it.
Yeah, never a doubt.
Never a doubt. We're so back when it's been Jover for 8 innings. Game 2, yes, Nathan Eovaldi, that's the matchup that you're probably the most worried about because he is a quality major league pitcher. Like, on Saturday, if that's the one where you lose, I'm not going to be super upset. The Game 3, a guy that just got absolutely dookied on by the Dodgers, Dane Dunning. Why can't the Mariners go do that? Maybe because they don't have the Dodgers offense. Maybe they don't have the number 1 rated offense in all of baseball. Probably. All right. I get it. Okay. They're not the Dodgers. They don't have Teoscar Hernandez.
Huh.
But man, imagine if they did. Why didn't the Mariners re-sign him? Anyways, it would be Dane Dunning in Game 3 against Logan Gilbert. I'm not moved by having to face Dane Dunning.
Mm-hmm. I think that the Mariners have plenty of video on Dane Dunning. They've faced him plenty of times at this point, and I feel like, and don't quote me on this, I feel like they've taken care of him in the past.
I will say, no, this year, 4 1/3, 4 earned. It was this year. I think last year he owned us low.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
well, last year in May, 6 innings, 6 hits, 2 earned. And then September of last year, 5 1/3, 4 hits, 4 earned. So the last 2 times out, a little bit better as far as we're concerned. But we get it. You're right. Okay, you were right.
Which means he's probably going to throw a perfect game against them
naturally,
in the final game of that series. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of how I feel about this Rangers series, obviously, just win the series and I'll be happy.
Yes.
But a lot of it also hinges on how the rest of this White Sox series goes. Like, let's say that, full disclosure, we're recording this before Game 3.
Correct.
Full disclosure. Let's say the Mariners end up sweeping the White Sox, mopping them, if you will. You have a little bit more wiggle room there, especially if the Astros and the Rangers lose.
Yeah, I mean, they're playing the Dodgers, the Rangers are, and then the Astros, against the Giants?
Yep.
So
yeah, so you have wiggle room there. Let's say that does happen. Let's say the Dodgers again beat the Rangers this evening, and you sweep/mop the White Sox. You have more wiggle room there, where if you lose the series to the Rangers, it's not the end of the world, right? And the Mariners took the series against the Rangers earlier in the year, right? Yeah. And so you, in terms of like head to head, what am I trying to say here? Head to head,
like against the opponent record, yeah.
Yeah. Like the Mariners are still sitting pretty. They're 6-1 or whatever it is, 6-2 versus the Astros this year. They won the series already once versus the Rangers. Like, there's still plenty of times that they're going to play these teams, including at the very end of the year in September. If you lose a series to them in May or June, whatever month it is, my God, June, it's okay. But I'm still going to be pissed because I'm a Mariners fan. I'm going to be
Yeah.
mad because it's like, well, it's the beginning of the end. Here we go.
That's the start of the downfall.
But it really does start, Joe, with taking care of the Chicago White Sox the rest of the way.
Yeah, you have to continue to beat up on the very bad teams, and you're not going to win every series. The fact that the Mariners have avoided being swept so far this year is great. They're continuing to, one, stay within themselves, stay trying to like be positive gains within series themselves, but also like avoid buying position, and then they'll be in a better position to take better care of the Rangers and the Astros and other opponents like that further down the line with an improved lineup or an improved pitching staff or an improved bullpen with some injury concerns of guys like Wu and Munoz, however that's looking, if Santos isn't fully sharp when he comes back, however long Gabe Spire's out for. There's a couple things on this team right now that like would be improved by obviously bringing someone in. Same thing with the offense of like certain guys just have down games. If you get someone to be an everyday fixture in the lineup and remove some of those bad games, like Hander going 0 for 4 with 2 Ks, but sure, he dropped in the bloop in the first game, but didn't do super well in the second game. Like, there's ways that this series, if you do lose it against the Rangers, doesn't come back to bite you, but it all, I think, depends on how the rest of the year goes, especially when it comes to the deadline. And Colton, there have been some, not even some, a handful, numerous conversations about trade talks. Should they watch the video that's probably on their screen right now?
I think that they should, Joe. Click on it right now. And thank you guys so much for watching episode 95 of the Hit It Here podcast presented by Bet Online, the aired episode of the Hit It Here podcast. And go Mariners.